we go from here. Sorry. Hello and welcome to ADA 35. Where do we go from here? This is an event co-sponsored with Disability Community for Democracy and Principles First. Disability Community for Democracy is a peer-run organization dedicated to defending the rights of the disabled and making sure that we have a voice at any table that in public life. And I am Robert Faze. I am the legal and policy lead for Disability Community for Democracy. And this is an event that is focused on what we need to advocate for from here. And Brittany, why don't you give a little introduction of Principles First and what your organization is about?
Thank you, Bob, and it's a pleasure to be here with all of you today. Principles First is a national grassroots organization that is committed to defending the Constitution, upholding the rule of law, and we really care about making sure that our elected officials do the same thing. They all take an oath to the Constitution, and we have an annual summit and where I was able to meet one of the leads here, Naida Green, and it became very evident very early on in conversations that we thought this would be a great opportunity of collaboration. And so we're very thrilled to be here with you and to share, these thoughts from some really incredible experts in the field. And we're grateful to be with you guys today.
All right. Thank you so much for that. The next thing that we have coming up is History of Disabled Rights and Justice Movement, which is run by Jennifer Camp. So if somebody could spotlight her, and I will turn my camera off.
Thank you, Bob. I'm Jennifer Camp. I'm going to give a brief overview of disability rights history and the ADA. So Brittany, if you could pull up the slides. It's not showing up on my side.
Let me try that one more time.
There we go. Okay. Perfect. So as I was saying, this will be a brief history of the disability rights movement. And you can go to the next slide. And before I get into some of the legislation, I want to first talk about two key leaders in the movement and some of their accomplishments. Next slide. The first leader is Ed Roberts. He is known as the father of the independent living movement. Ed acquired his disability status at 14 years of age in 1953 from the polio virus. And you can go to the next slide. And his accomplishments and career is that Ed was the first quadriplegic student to attend UC Berkeley, although his admittance was not welcomed with open arms. He and his parents had to fight to advocate for him to attend the university, and they did that through public pressure by going to the local press. And he was ultimately accepted, and his acceptance paved the way for other disabled students to attend. And then in 1970, the first Disabled Student Center was opened, and Ed founded that. The center assisted disabled students at UC Berkeley with things like finding accessible housing, hiring personal care attendants for students, and they also advocated for accessible transportation and installing curb cuts around the city of Berkeley. And then in 1972, that student center led to the opening of the first Center for Independent Living in Berkeley, which now has over 400 locations nationwide. Next slide. After his education, Ed, in 1975, was appointed by the then governor of California, Jerry Brown. He was appointed as director of the Department of Rehabilitation, which is a government agency whose mission is to provide services for disabled people that result in education, employment, and independent living. Under Ed's leadership, the Department of Education approached disability as a social issue instead of a medical one. Disability was measured by the quality of a person's life with help instead of the medical model, which measured it by the number of tasks a person can do without help. Next slide. The other leader I want to talk about is Judy Heumann. She started an advocacy group called the American Coalition of Citizens with Disabilities, and she's most known for fighting for the passage of Section 504 and its regulations. Next slide. Section 504 is a provision of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. It prohibits discrimination against individuals with disabilities in any program that receives federal financial assistance or is conducted by a federal agency. It forbids any organization or employer from excluding or denying disabled persons equal access to opportunities. It ensures that programs and activities are accessible and that reasonable accommodations are provided to support equal access. And again, that is for any program receiving federal financial assistance. Next slide. However, the road to signing 504 was not easy. The President Carter's Secretary of Health, Education, and Welfare refused to sign the regulations which would implement the bill. In April of 1976, Judy's coalition mobilized people with disabilities nationwide, occupying HUE offices in 9 cities. And while most of those protests only lasted a day or two, Judy and the protesters who occupied the HUE office in San Francisco lasted 26 days. For the protest, there was approximately 150 disabled people and allies inside the building, and about 800 people outside the building gathering at any point in time over that time period. Ally groups supported the protesters, which included the Black Panthers, who provided meals to the protesters during those 26 days. Next slide. Disabled people believe that equal access and equal opportunities is our civil right. Activists, lobbyists, and advocate orgs came together to make the first draft of the ADA, which was presented to Congress in 1988. However, the bill stalled and did not move forward at that time. Opponents argued that the financial implications were too great. It wasn't reviewed again until March 12, 1990. And it was on that day that members of American Disabled for Attendant Programs Today, known as ADAPT, led a march to the Capitol building. More than 500 disabled people and allies participated as they occupied the rotunda and demanded that the ADA be signed into law. When they approached the Capitol steps, disabled people of all ages abandoned their mobility devices and physically crawled up to the top of the stairs to enter the building. This is known as the Capitol Crawl. Next slide. 4 months after the Capitol Crawl, President George H.W. Bush signed the Americans with Disabilities Act into law. It was the first time that a sweeping national legislation was in place that legally ensured disabled persons could not be excluded from housing, schools, and civic life. Next slide. Continuing upon his father's legacy with the ADA, in 2008, George W. Bush signed an amendment to the original document. This amendment was put forth in response to Supreme Court rulings that were viewed as interpreting the scope of the ADA very narrowly. And so the amendment broadened the definition of disability. It added disabilities that were more episodic or things that were in remission, like cancer. It argued that these conditions were impactful to daily lives when they became active. Another thing the amendment added is a long list of examples for major life activities, so that there was less room for interpretation of this verbiage by the individual courts. Next slide. And then moving forward, years later, an executive order was signed on July 26th, 2010, by President Barack Obama to increase federal employment of individuals with disabilities. The goal of this executive order, one of the goals was to increase the hiring of an additional 100,000 federal employees in the next 5 years and implement training programs for recruiting and hiring disabled employees, which had not been in place before. Next slide. And then again, on June 25th, 2021, an executive order was signed by President Joe Biden to increase diversity, equity, and inclusion in the federal workforce. Some of the goals of this executive order was to increase the use of accessible technologies in the workplace, streamlining the process for requesting reasonable accommodations, and further expand the DEIA training. And lastly, which brings us to current events, on May 13th and June 25th of this year, members of ADAPT protested the cuts to Medicaid in the reconciliation bill. Approximately 30 disabled protesters and allies were escorted from the Russell Senate office building and arrested. And that brings us up to current events.
Thank you so much for that presentation, Jennifer. It was educational to me, so I imagine it's very educational to a lot of other people. Next thing we have coming up is a statement from Congresswoman Lateefah Simon. We have a video to play.
Hello, family. It's Congresswoman Lateefah Simon representing California's 12th Congressional District. I am so sorry that I can't join you today, and I know how important this conversation is, so please keep me updated. The disability rights movement and the 35th anniversary of the ADA are so close to my heart. As the first congenitally blind member to serve in the United States Congress, I have been shaped by the advocacy of the disability rights community and this justice movement in particular. The work of the advocates on this call have allowed me to grow from a student of the movement to a leader within it. In Congress, I am proud to have introduced 4 bills on disability policy since January, and I am fighting for access to Medicaid day in and day out. Every one of us, we carry the fight with us in our daily lives, but we know the struggle is far from over. This administration and its allies are working to undo hard-won rights that our elders secured, and they want to roll back the protections and make our communities invisible again. But we can't let them. When we join hands across differences and fight with joy and discipline, I know that we can't be erased and we won't be stopped. And as we look at 35 years of the ADA and how we have moved forward, please know that the fight continues, and I'm with you every step of the way. And I have so much gratitude for all the work that you all are doing. We honor the past and we fight for the present, and together we will create a future for disability justice. Thank you.
And with that, the next thing we have coming up is a panel about elected officials and Disability Commission officials panel. And this is going to be facilitated by our founder and CEO, Naida Green. Naida, I turn it over to you.
Hi, everyone. I am trying to make sure that we are all set. If you can just spotlight the panelists, that would be easiest to do that. I see TJ Gordon's here, and I see the representative is here. So if you can spotlight or pin, either one is fine. Pin is actually preferable, so that'd be great. TJ, if you can turn on your camera so you can be easily found.
It's on already.
Okay. Okay, all right. Tech. Okay, let
Hi
me
there.
see.
I'm happy to, sorry, if
Yeah, if you
spotlight.
can, if you can add everybody, that'd be great. Because I'm now gone.
I added. Am I missing? Apologize.
Okay. Add pin. Let me just do this. Add pin. Okay, we're all set. Everyone's here. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Naida Green, and I'm the CEO and founder of Disability Community for Democracy. And I don't know what it is, but there's been a lot of tech gremlins today. And but I am really grateful to be here in community. Congresswoman Presley, Ayanna Pressley, who is my representative in, I call it the Fighting Seventh in Massachusetts, which covers part of Boston, part of Cambridge, and part of Boston, part of Cambridge, and a lot of the communities north of Boston, pretty much. So she quotes Dr. King about, do we choose chaos or community? And everyone on this call has decided to choose community. And I happen to be in DC this week for the CBC annual legislative conference, and I got a chance to actually meet Congresswoman Simon, and of course, to spend time with Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley. And I'm super excited to do this panel. So I'm going to introduce our panelists. Our first panelist is TJ Gordon. TJ serves on the Illinois State Independent Living Commission. TJ is also on our leadership team here as our framing assistant framing lead. And then Josh, if I say your last name wrong, you can correct me. People say my name wrong all the time. Tersh, I'm sorry if I said it wrong. He's Iowa State representative and also candidate in the state of Iowa for U.S. Senate to replace the terrible senator who said that we all die. So I would normally say that person's name, but I don't want to give them any more energy in this space. So I'm going to allow Josh to go first to talk about, himself and who he is and everything else.
Sure. Hello, everyone. I'm Iowa State Representative Josh Turek. I'm the first permanently disabled member of the Iowa Legislature, which is particularly incredible given the fact that we are the state of the father of the American with Disabilities Act, Senator Tom Harkin, my hero. The Iowa Capitol wasn't even fully accessible with ramps, unfortunately. And and I'm now running for the United States Senate. You can say her name, Joni Ernst. She's not running for re-election anymore, and so the witch is dead. And we've got an amazing opportunity here in Iowa to be able to take our state back, because we do have a long legacy. 30 years, Senator Tom Harkin, the father of the American with Disability Act, was our senator. Had it not been for the work of Senator Tom Harkin, I would never be where I am today. A little bit about my story. I was born with my condition. I was born with a condition called spina bifida, and this was due to my dad's exposure to Agent Orange in Vietnam. So I had my first surgery at 1 day old. I had 21 surgeries before I was even 12. Most of these took place at Shriners Hospital. It was the only way that my family could afford it. I'm one of these families that grew up with Goodwill clothes and free summer lunch programs, and so I'm somebody that's intimately familiar with, on a personal level, all of these social safety nets like Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security that we are eroding and defunding. The reason, actually, some other things about my story. I played professional wheelchair basketball around the world. I played in 4 Paralympic Games. I won 2 gold medals. I've been actively involved as a director in nonprofit work for individuals with disabilities. We provide free summer camps to disabled kids and provide adaptive equipment, just because it's a huge barrier to entry in this. And honestly, it was adaptive sports that saved my life. Had it not been for wheelchair basketball and Voc Rehab, I would not have gone to college. And then I've also, I was working as an assistive technology professional, assessing and providing wheelchairs for the disabled population. And that is actually what got me interested in running for politics, is because what we were showing, even in communities with progressive debilitating conditions like muscular dystrophy and ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, we are showing, since Iowa had privatized our Medicaid system, a 1,000% increase in the denial rate. And then I had found out that additionally, we had never had a permanently disabled member. So we've got 1 in 5 Iowans, blind, deaf, intellectually disabled, physically disabled. And yet in a state of 150 years with a governing body of 150 members, there was no representation. And I really fundamentally believe that it was this lack of representation from our population group that was what was leading to these unnecessary barriers to healthcare and to employment. And so, as all of us that enter into public service have to do, we have to meet the man in the mirror and say, well, somebody's going to have to do something about this, and that someone's going to have to be me. And so I went out every single day and drugged my wheelchair upstairs to be able to have conversations. I ended up overperforming the top of the ticket, the Trump administration, by 14 points. Trump administration ended up winning my county by 20 points and won the 2 communities I represent by double digits. And I was able to win by 6 points. And what I talked about a lot was the need for representation for all groups, particularly our minority group of the disabled population, because what is happening between the cuts to Medicaid, the cuts to the AEA and driving up people's insurance. Here in Iowa, we've got 1 in 5 individuals that are on Medicaid, 2 in 5 in the rural communities. And 110,000 Iowans are going to lose their health care because of the big beautiful bill. And this is in a state where we already have 22,000 disabled Iowans that are on Medicaid wait list, the longest of which is 7 years for care. It is fundamentally wrong that between Iowa, we are also one of the states that have been included in the 504 lawsuit. So I spent a lot of the last legislative session talking to the Attorney General about that piece of legislation. I mean, we're talking about our basic civil rights protections are being eroded. And one of the things that gives me the most pride is being able to represent the disabled population, not only my community, but the entire disabled population here in Iowa. And this is one of the reasons why I'm actually running for the United States Senate now, is to be able to not only represent the 3.2 million Iowans, but when you're talking about federal policy and the cuts to Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, all these vital social safety nets, to be able to have impact in policy on 320 million Americans. It's what gets me out of day and inspires me to do these long hours and travel the state and travel the country to be able to pull this off.
Thanks, Josh. TJ, why don't you tell people a little bit about yourself and your activism and your role on your commission?
Absolutely not. No, I'm just kidding. I will. Well, hi everyone. My name is TJ Gordon. He, his pronouns. And for those who are looking for visual descriptions, I describe myself as a king-sized African American male with locks, glasses, a long gray shirt, and pants, sitting in a office slash living room. It's a pleasure to be here, and I wear so many hats like Josh. So if I might spend like hours, but I'll do my best I can to cut down all the hats I wear. So as Naida mentioned, I am a two-term board member of Illinois statewide independent living council, where we help push policies to not only strengthen our independent living centers in Illinois, but also to ensure that Illinois and the counties and local areas within Illinois provide as many opportunities for independent living as possible in all fronts, whether it's housing, employment, transportation, etc. I'm also a researcher at the Institute on Disability and Human Development at the University of Illinois, Chicago, or UIC for short. As a researcher at UIC, I help not only create presentations, but also plain language material and webinars on disability-related topics such as the intersection of disability and race, customized employment, also inclusive sex education, and more that's tied to developmental disabilities. In fact, within the job that I'm in, me and a colleague, Jay Jin Pak, has co-founded a self-advocacy organization called Chicagoland Disabled People of Color Coalition. We've been around for, 7 years. 7 years. We are a self-advocacy organization that is led by Chicagoland disabled people. We promote and raise the voices of BIPOC, disabled, deaf, and neurodivergent folks who live in the Chicagoland area, and that includes Northwest Indiana and Southeast Wisconsin, even though we focus on Northeastern Illinois, especially Chicago proper. So with all the roles that I've been a part of, my main focus is to not only uplift BIPOC disabled voices like myself, but also create opportunities where they can share their stories and they can help promote inclusion in communities of color also. So
Thanks, TJ.
it's a it's a lot, but that's the abridged version I can give you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, TJ. I have a question, and it was not. I had a different question I was going to ask first, but given, and I'm going to ask Josh the question, and then I'm going to have you answer it. Given the press conference that happened on Monday, with Tylenol being, I know, TJ, I'm with you. It is boo. It is boo. It is terrible. I'm a neurodivergent individual with multiple things that make me neurodivergent. I also have I have physical disabilities as well. I live with multiple disabilities. And given the press conference that happened on Monday, Josh, and given your experience with, due to your father's exposure to Agent Orange, you were born with a disability. How did that make you feel as an individual, personally?
I mean, honestly, it's as an American. I mean, regardless of disability or not disability, I mean, it saddens me and it terrifies me. And certainly, as someone that is dedicating my life to legislative work, it's particularly terrifying that we're moving into a post-fact world where we've got two different groups living in two different realities. But what the current administration is doing is disgraceful, particularly in the area of HHS and on social safety nets. And honestly, that is where I feel like they are putting out so much out there that is to be distractionary at times. I'm trying to keep my primary focus on that healthcare is a human right, and that we need affordable and accessible healthcare for everyone. And because these healthcare cuts in particular are hurting those with disabilities and the most vulnerable, the elderly, the disabled, poor children. And it's just to give tax breaks to billionaires. That's what I'm saying. I'm in a state right now where we have a absolute direct care worker crisis because the lack of reimbursement is so low that the average direct care worker is only making $13 an hour. Like, that is affecting the disabled population the most. That is directly due to the cuts at the federal level. I'm in a state right now where we've lost 31 nursing homes, skilled nursing facilities, and rural hospitals in my state. That is due to the lack of reimbursements. I mean, we're dead last in terms of OBGYN. This is where I'm trying to keep my focus, because the Trump administration is putting so much, and I'll just use, for the lack of better term, bullshit out there at all times. And it's sad to me and it's tragic, but I'm trying to keep my eye and my focus on the big picture, which is making sure that every single disabled person in this country has access to quality healthcare and opportunities to be able to be employed. It's the only way that we can have a reasonable existence.
Thanks, Josh. TJ, the same question. Now, I'm going to say that I did see your video on social media. So if you want to talk about that as well, that would be great.
All right, so just for a quick plug, I also talk about race and disability, especially blackness and disability, autism included, in my blog / social media persona called The Black Autist, AUTIST. For those who want to see the video or follow me in that platform later, find me on IG, Facebook, YouTube, etc. That's where you'll find the video. In response to this bullshit um press conference, I'm sorry, it's bullshit. And it's the second time that RFK Jr. and the administration in general were making unfounded um statements about autism in particular, because I am identified myself as autistic. So that's very personal. A few months ago, RFK Jr. basically said, autistic people are a waste of time. Why even help them out? They never going to play baseball. They never going to use the bathroom. They never going to date. Blah, blah, blah. What a tragedy. We gotta save them. Fast forward to the press conference recently with him and Trump basically coming out with, for a pregnant woman, you take Tylenol, it causes autism. So I decided to speak up against that statement by creating a parody video where pretend this is Tylenol, okay? Pretend this is Tylenol. I decided to take Tylenol for my aching knees, and I jokingly said, let's see if Tylenol will make me more autistic. Spoiler alert, it doesn't. In fact, it didn't even help my knee pain, to be honest, like it's supposed to. So it definitely didn't cause me to be more autistic. I feel like Josh mentioned, it's a distraction. It is a distraction from what's really going on, which is America taking away the safety nets that the disability community relies on. And also the attacks that some of our states who support the administration is trying to take away our rights and liberties and support nets too. I am fortunate that I live in the state of Illinois where not only I have a mayor that is against the policies, but also a governor. But even then, I feel like it's not enough. So in the video, I pretty much said, look, Tylenol doesn't work. I already know what causes autism. Blame mom and dad. That's autism in a nutshell. Blame those two. And I'm also, what really drove me to do the video is I'm also an autistic parent. I'm a father of two beautiful kids. One that I create. The other one is my goddaughter. That really pissed me off when they basically saying autism is not natural. We should find the cause. Now, I already know the cause. It's me. It's my parents. Let's focus more so on supporting people with disabilities to thrive in life. Support them in being more independent or interdependent. Support them to have dates or play sports or do whatever they want to do. Give us a support instead of coming up with excuses and not scientifically supported theories about disability, stuff that's been disproven for years. It's like the autism and vaccines thing where they try to convince us that vaccines cause autism, which is not. So yeah, it's all a distraction, like Josh said, and I'm glad we eventually are doing something about it, and I hope more people could challenge defeats and help the public redirect their focus on what's really at stake, our lives.
Thank you, TJ. The next question I have is what I call the big thievery bill. I don't call it I'm not using their language. I'm calling it the big thievery bill because it is literally the biggest wealth transfer in our country's history. And if we know the history of our country, this started in the 1980s with another Republican president named Ronald Reagan, right?
Economics.
Yes, exactly. So, and this is the thing that I think people forget. This was all in Project 2025. And so people were warned. How at this point, Josh, specifically since you represent in the state house, you won in a red district. How do you convince your constituents that what they're being told is lies? Because that's what I'm just gonna call it what it is.
Well, I think
They're playing in our faces, they're lying to us. So how do you convince them?
I think, thankfully, I think that people are actually waking up, and I'm not having to tell them it's lies. They've been told faux populism. They've been told that their grocery prices are going to go down, that house prices are going to go down, that their healthcare is going to become cheaper and more affordable, and everything is going the opposite direction. Particularly here in a rural state, where his tariffs are tanking our commodities prices, and it's really, really hurting farmers, small businesses. What I'm hearing is a lot of people are really legitimately struggling to keep food on the table, and struggling to keep a roof above their head. And none of that has gotten better or easier in the Trump administration. But everywhere I'm going, I'm feeling even Republicans and independents that have legitimate buyer's remorse about the administration. And so I actually think that what this can be is a wake up call and a chance for us to take our country back. You talk about the big, beautiful bill. I think this is one of the things that we need to be talking about the most, because this is the most direct, egregious example of what this administration is doing and what they're caring about. They have cut millions of people off of their basic health care. Here in Iowa, 110,000 people are going to lose their health care. This is in a state where our Medicaid is already completely underfunded and broken. You cannot find a single provider for basic dental care in the entire state due to the lack of reimbursements. It's, like I said, 22,000 disabled Iowans right now in our Medicaid system. Longest wait list, 7 years, no direct care workers, closures all over the state. And then additionally, when you're talking about SNAP cuts, thousands and thousands of families are going to lose their SNAP benefits. And in a state like Iowa, 90% of the people that are receiving SNAP benefits are families that fall into 4 categories: families that have poor children, disabled, the elderly, and families with veterans. That's what you're doing just to make enormous tax breaks to people that are making millions of dollars and billions of dollars. It's wrong, but I think that this is our opportunity to come together. And particularly one of my main messages, if we're talking about America post ADA, right? This was never meant to be the be all end all. This was supposed to be our on ramp onto society, and we were supposed to continue to carry the flag forward. And I think one of the big opportunities that we have as the disabled population is to stop with the famine mentality, stop with being siloed, having the autism and the intellectual disabilities fighting for one thing, individuals with physical disabilities and a variety of physical disabilities fighting for very different things, the blind fighting for something, the deaf fighting for someone. I think we need to all come together as this, at the bare minimum, 15% of the population, and get organized and get galvanized and go out there and vote and tell people to vote and tell people that we are voting on healthcare. That is the big disconnect, is that people are showing up and they're voting on guns or voting on abortion or culture war issue du jour. We've got to vote on healthcare, because that's something that every single American can recognize. And if we come together like that, of our percentage of the population, we have enough of our population alone to swing any election. And this is our opportunity in this midterm to be able to take our country back, if we as the disabled population or organize or come together and support our candidates.
Thanks, Josh. I'm going to ask TJ, I'm going to ask you a similar question, but along the lines of employment, given how your job is funded. Can you, like the big, you wrote an article about how the big thievery bill will impact our ability, your job's ability to do its work and in general. Tell me about your experience, and I'm not asking you to just tell me whatever you can, what's publicly known, obviously, how it would impact how this bill is going to impact your work moving forward.
Sure. And I know it's a little complex because it's not just the big theory bill, but also series of executive orders as well. Most of it to me is unconstitutional, to be honest, but that's another story. But I feel with the current legislation that has been passed so far, it affects my job directly because let's say if the administration for some reason take away or alter the Developmental Disabilities Act, alter the ADA or other things that funds disability programs, my university is a part of a collection of universities funded by the Developmental Disabilities Act and providing services for people with developmental disabilities and family members. Services like getting diagnosed with any intellectual or developmental disability, um, anything legal regarding developmental disabilities, learning more about developmental disabilities within itself, but also how to basically not only be more aware and more accepting, but also how can you include um people with developmental disabilities in all phases of life. That includes higher education, K through 12 education, housing, employment, and even parenting now. Our program and other programs like the Institute on Disability Human Development is being funded to support those communities. You take the funding away, we don't exist, basically. And part of the money go towards me making sure that I can do my research. I'll be out of a job, basically. And unfortunately, our employment rate for people with disabilities in general is still very low. Granted, yes, there's more initiatives to not only work, but also get paid fair wages and have the ability to work in any field we want besides customer service. But we have a long way to go. And also, if if the funding for those programs disappear, I don't work, I don't provide for my family, and I'll be a miserable SOB. In short, basically. And I do have a quick question for you, Josh. You mentioned, oh, sorry. It's
TJ, I have two more questions I really need to ask. So
go for it. I'm sorry.
okay, thanks, TJ. Let me just get through these questions. If we have time, you can ask. There was a question placed in the chat that that I was going to ask anyway, so I'm going to just ask this live. So organizations like Disability Community for Democracy exist to create unity among multiple disabilities. So the question is, and I'm just going to read it as it's written. How can we create unity within the disability, unity in the disability community advocacy, like the representatives suggest. And I'm gonna actually have TJ answer it because because I just think it makes sense since you were talking about, work and stuff like that.
Oh, can you repeat the question one more time? My apologies.
Okay, so it's about creating unity within the disability community advocacy. How can we create
Okay.
unity? So could just make it short, like a couple of sentences.
No, I got you. I got you. I just want to understand the question. That's all. How to be able to create unity. The unity is really could start with creating the spaces for people to be united and have a voice and to create the systems for where they could speak up and speak out. It starts with that. And otherwise, if there's no spaces for people to speak up and speak out, then we already, as you can see, we already are being shunned by major players with our freedom of speech. We can't really rely on them as much, so we really have to create our own spaces to spread the word about what's going on and figure out how we could combat those cuts or barriers, etc.
Thanks, TJ. Josh, what's
Yeah.
your opinion on that question?
Here's what we do. We, as a community, we focus on the handful of issues that is going to rise the tides for every single boat. And that is going to be things like employment, doing away with employment barriers. That would be like doing away with unnecessary income and asset limits for Medicaid. That is going to be fighting for things like raising a minimum wage, doing away with 14C certificates, which allows you to pay a person just due to a disability a sub-minimum wage. And this is going to be for fighting for healthcare, Medicaid. It's these issues that we are all united as the disabled population on, and it's ensuring that we're going out and being organized and galvanized about these issues, but then also ensuring that everyone else is aware that when we're going to the ballot box, we're voting on these issues. That's what we need to do. A handful of issues that supports us all that really makes a difference, which is healthcare and gainful employment. It's competitive integrated employment. We cannot have a meaningful life without gainful employment. And that's the big issue, is that the unemployment rate for individuals with disabilities, particularly with higher degrees, is one of the highest levels of unemployment. These are the things that can really help us all. And getting organized and galvanized and going out and voting in huge numbers.
Thank you. I have two more questions, and then I'm going to turn the panel over to our next person. The second to last question I have is, where do we go from here with the ADA? The ADA, and we talk about the ADA is the floor. That was, that's been said. The ADA was supposed to be the floor, and it was fundamentally based on the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And obviously, there has been some expansion of the ADA in 2008 due to a Supreme Court case. What do you think we do in this environment to with the ADA? Because no matter what space you're in, and even if you're in other marginalized spaces who are impacted, Josh talks about talking about issues that everybody benefits from. I was at the CBC annual legislative conference, and there was nothing on disability. Specifically on the intersection of disability and being Black. And so how do we tell people that disability is part of every community, and we have to include us at the table and linking that to the Americans with Disability Act?
Yeah, for far too long, we have been the silent minority. I mean, we have been, if you want to call us we the 15, the disabled population, we have been the invisible and silent minority. One of this is due to the lack of representation. of we need more individuals from the disabled population to be involved and engaged at all levels of government. You want to talk about another minority community, you talk about African American community. That's 13.6% of the overall population. Yet we've got mayors, we've got governors, we've got congressmen, we've got senators, we had a president. And yet from the disabled population at every single level of government, from the local to the state to the federal, we have essentially, we're underrepresented at the very little. And oftentimes, like in a state like Iowa, there was no representation. We have to get more people involved in this. It's the representation matters, and that's what's going to ultimately set the policy. We have to at least have a seat at the table. Now, when you're talking about where we go from here, you know, we owe a lot to Congressman Tony Coelho, who was the primary sponsor of the American with Disabilities Act in the House, and certainly my hero, Senator Tom Harkin from Iowa, who was the primary sponsor in there. What we need to do first is we need to protect what we have. There is an absolute assault on the civil rights, the 504 protections. We all in the disabled population need to reach out on that. If that by some circumstance is found unconstitutional, you can have fruit of the poisonous tree, and you can see all of the civil rights protections of the American with Disabilities Act pulled away as well. So right now it's keep what we have. But additionally, going forward, what we are fighting for now, the American with Disabilities Act provided us a way to an on-ramp onto society. So it provided us bathrooms and curb cutouts and an ability to operate within society, opportunities to occupation and to education that we finally have. But what we need to continue to fight for now is healthcare. Without our healthcare, most of us in the disabled population cannot function or exist. And so it's focused on healthcare, and it's also on removing the unnecessary barriers to employment. That is the next step of the American with Disabilities Act. It provided us the on-ramp. Now, to be genuinely successful, we need affordable, accessible healthcare, and we need a dignity in pay and jobs. That is where we go from here.
TJ, same question. And then I'm just going to say what my final question is going to be is like for people to, you can tell people how to find you, follow you. So, TJ, the first question that I asked, which is, you know, where do we go from here?
Yeah. And that's where when he wins the Senate seat, that's where Josh come in. How come we are the founding folks of disability inclusion, especially with the ADA, but we are lagging behind worldwide when it comes to disability inclusion? Part of it is we are missing out on this great opportunity to take the ADA to the next level. We should be a part of the Convention of Rights of Persons with Disabilities, which sets the standards of disability rights and inclusion worldwide as well. And I think if you could help convince Congress to have the United States be a part of that convention, it will help us tremendously in not only keeping what we have, but to take it to the next level where we can be inclusive to people in the United States, those who visit in the United States, and everywhere we go. We could finally be the power player that we're supposed to be, instead of talking about we the power players of disability rights when our own foundation is getting attacked and we as Americans are very complacent with it. Let's be honest.
So we're going to wrap this up. TJ, can you tell people where they can find you?
Yes, I will type my information in the chat, but just Google Timotheus Gordon Jr. or the Black Artist or the Institute on Disability and Human Development. I'll be found, but I will type everything in the chat.
Thanks, TJ. And I'm going to also give a plug about Disability Community for Democracy, and then I'm going to end with Josh. Disability Community for Democracy is basically the first organization that is really like saying we got to do this work in an intersectional way. We can no longer be siloed, not only in terms of the different types of disabilities, but the different lived experiences. Because at the end of the day, I, as a woman of color who is Puerto Rican and Cuban and African American, who lives in a different part of the country, has a different and has certain privileges, class privileges, because I come from an educated family, was able to get services when I was a kid versus people who live in the same region of the country that I live in, but they live in the inner city and they don't have access to resources, and they look like me. And so those conversations are important. So we're doing so for those who are looking for a place to, show some unity. This is the place for you. We're looking for people to get involved. I'm just going to put this out here to Josh. Josh, we are going to support your campaign as an organization. So I just want to say that.
I've got another.
I know you got to go. So you want to.
Just please, this is my website, Turek, the number 4 Iowa.com. Join us. We're going to need an army of volunteer support. Tell your friends, share our stuff. I'm on IG, every single one of the socials. Follow us, share us. This is our chance for the disabled population to really have a seat in the voice in government. If we can win this Senate race here in Iowa, we're talking about being 51, the majority of the U.S. Senate, and all of these Trump policies and all of these assaults on our civil rights and our healthcare benefits will stop. So please join me in the fight. And thank you. It's a pleasure to be on here with you guys.
Thanks, Josh. And we will support your campaign. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now the next part of our presentation, I'm going to turn it over to our next facilitator. And I'm just trying to see if I can find them. There you are, Elaine. Your camera's on now. I am going to pin you, and then TJ and I are gonna say peace out.
Well, hi. So now we have a panel on that is with disability rights and justice organization leaders and activists. I am Elaine Stephen. I am partnerships chair for Principles First, and I am also a person who lives with mental illness. I am a mental health consumer, and so our panelists for this are Keith Jones and Tamika Kitchen-Spruce, and I will let them introduce themselves as soon as they're pinned. So here's Tamika. So I'll let Tamika introduce herself, and then Keith is joined as well. So go right ahead.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Thank you for Naita and Elaine for giving me the opportunity. It's also an honor to speak alongside my friend and fellow activist, Keith Jones. So my name is Tamika Kitchen-Spruce. Her pronouns. I am from Detroit, Michigan, and I'm a disability justice activist, also filmmaker, and also a speaker. And I am fully launching my production company, Living Unapologetically Media, which unapologetically centers Black and brown people, disabled women and girls. So creating representation and also consulting on creating full inclusion.
Thank you. We're glad you're here. Keith?
Thank you for having me, and thank you to both organizations for inviting me. Nobody ever has to listen to anything that I have to say, so it's always an honor to be invited to speak. Tamika, what's good? How you doing? You know, we're always in good spaces when you see wonderful people that do the work. My name is Keith Jones. I'm an African American male wearing glasses, wearing with a beard and a black and white shirt, with the background of my company, Soul Touching Experiences LLC. Um, excuse me. So I guess I do a lot of stuff. So I'm gonna try to make it really kind of condensed. So currently we are launching several programs and initiatives that are targeted across disability, cross culture, particularly focused on Black and Brown youth in terms of leadership, in terms of our program that we've announced called Accessible Sports and Society, where we'll have the Leadership Academy mentorship. It sits at the intersection of sports, entertainment, and technology. So that's on the ground. A bunch of other stuff. We also are in a movie on Tubi. So if y'all really want to watch some raunchy stuff, go to Tubi and put in Special Needs Revolt, the movie. It is ironic, related to our topic today, directed by a person with autism who wrote this 7 years ago, satirical about current events. So that, I'll leave the rest to be discovered via Google. But if you come up with a weird picture, that wasn't me. I was chilling.
Well, we're glad you're both here. So I was just kind of refreshing my memory some this morning on everything that's happened with just disability rights. I mean, the ADA kind of started off disability rights. Actually, it started in 1973 with the Rehabilitation Act, but then the ADA kind of kicked it into overdrive, and now we've got the is it the IDA rules, and there are just a lot of, like, the Olmsted decision. There are a lot of different things that affect and impact disability rights. It's bigger than, at this point, thank goodness, than just the ADA. But just since January, there was an April 2025 executive order ending recognition of disparate impact discrimination. And so that right there means that federal entities are not going to recognize that somebody with a disability is impacted differently than somebody who doesn't have one. The civil rights enforcement staff from most federal agencies have been let go. And so those are the folks who say, hey, there's some discrimination going on in how we're applying our laws and how we're operating our programs. The people who monitor that are no longer there. There have been the cuts to Medicaid, coming cuts to the ACA, cuts to the VA, cuts to research, and cuts to SNAP. There was the July 2025 executive order where the president basically said that people with mental illness who are homeless should be institutionalized, which goes contrary to the Olmsted decision, and which would, in another day and time, include me. There's been the elimination of Housing First, which allows for barrier-free housing for people with disabilities. And then also now they can remove people from federal housing if they're not pursuing treatment. And there is a new rule that allows federal funding recipients to share our private health data with law enforcement. So that's a lot in just a very short amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
So how are all these changes impacting people with disabilities? Recognizing that that's a lot of us.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I think we're definitely seeing tangible effects of all these policies, because we also have to understand and we do know that within disability, there's a lot of intersectionality within that. So when it affects, like DEI and, a lot of Black women in particular, that have seen the Black women have disproportionately have been, lost their jobs since July, due to DEI, federal and other, programs and other things just, being let go. And I never thought that, I'm one of those people. I was let go of my job in July. And I know 3 other Black disabled women who've been let go of their job as well within the last 3 months. So, it's those things that's being on the ground. I've also got another call from a friend that there's a person, who is transgender, and they, I guess the government told them that they could not receive their benefits. As a person was transgender, they were forced to say, the gender they were reassigned, that they were assigned at birth to get their benefits. And I'm like, that's the first time I've heard that. But the person told me, yeah, it's happening. People are, just being told, you don't have Medicaid, you don't have SSI, and things like that. So these are policies is affecting, people at disproportionate rate, and it's hard impact. So it's like, what are we supposed to do? And then when you try to file, like you spoken of, for discrimination complaint, whatever the case may be, there's not going to be people there to enforce it. So I've seen it having real horrible effects, for myself.
Keith, what are you seeing?
Well, I'm seeing what was intended to be seen. So again, I'm going to take a different tact at the question. The disproportionate impacts were laid out in a document that has 900 plus pages. It is undergirded by a political movement that has a 60-year history of redress of social progress towards Black. If you talk about the disability rights movement and the impact on the ground, the functionality of what we deem disabled is predicated upon who decides what a functional body is. What is that historically in the United States? The disproportionate impact of Black women. I'm a Black man. So when I see this, that is my sister, that is me, that is my brother, that is my aunt, that is everybody I know, that is everybody we're on this call with who work in social justice. So the impacts are real. Sitting on boards of directors, it's how do we keep our organization on footings that are separated apart from when literally you have a white nationalist terrorist organization directing the power of the federal government at particular demographics in which they deem inferior. We have to stop talking about this in this vacuum as if it's disability, this, gender, that. This is clear and simple. You are having real world proportional impacts on specific populations that are targeted, that have been identified since 1971. There's a reason it took 1973 to 1983 because I was 14 when it actually got implemented. So when you talk about the things that people are talking about, with 35 years of ADA, I was 21. Right? You talk about the onset decision. We were marching in DC talking about our homes, not nursing homes. So the response that Tamika is having to deal with, the response of the trans community, the response of the elder, the response of the veterans. People forget it wasn't until 9/11 disabled veterans even started to hear thank you for your service, because we had echoes of Vietnam. And it wasn't until the early 2000s that people started expanding chronic illness and mental health into our disability community. The responses we are seeing are exactly what they are intended, for us to be pretending that anything other than shock, that gutting entire agencies is going to lead to negative outcomes. Like, apparently people weren't paying attention to the obvious. So I think the way what I'm seeing on the ground is a slow recognition that, okay, it's real now, even though it always has been.
Yeah. And you bring up a good point that DEI it's not just DEI, it's DEIA. And it's all in there together. And and for those who don't know, it's disability, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. And accessibility is what has allowed those of us with disabilities to be able to get, it's wheelchair ramps, it's braille for those who can't see, it is for mental health, it's like the extra time on tests or being able to take tests in a quiet room. There's so many little accommodations that people don't, that have gotten to be so ubiquitous, even for abled people, that sometimes people don't see them as accommodations anymore. But until they're about to, because these are about to be taken away from so many of us. And our recourse to address them, as Tamika pointed out, is going away. The EEOC is not doing its job anymore. And I have lost a job. I had a boss say that I was not a trustworthy employee because I had depression. Yeah. Good.
Yeah. So as you all are mentioning, Tamika mentioned it, and as you just laid it out, this is where the disability rights movement has to have that coming to Jesus moment. Like, there, in the previous panel, there should never be a discussion about unity at this moment. There should never be a discussion about what do we need to do at this moment. There should never be about, you have 57 years of leadership and a history. You have 35 years of a civil rights law on the books, and and hundreds of disability organizations. People have made entire careers out of saying, I'm an advocate. Like, there are entire multi-million-dollar organizations that say we cater to I don't want to hear it. Nobody gets no passes no more. You are watching it in real time. What we are not having a discussion about is how sexism runs rampant within the disability community. What we are not talking about is how racism runs rampant within the disability community. What we are not talking about is how there's classification about who's disabled and who ain't within disability groups, which is why you have the fracture. People hopping mad about the autism thing, but ain't saying nothing about mental health. People are hopping mad about him getting on planes saying short people on doors or crashing airplanes. Nobody said nothing about transgender people who have disabilities. So there is no issue here other than people have to recognize, yes, you can be disabled and racist. Yes, a lot of these disability organizations were started because Johnny was a broken white boy and mommy started an organization. Let's keep it a buck. We are in an existential crisis where we have a duopoly, where the political party has abdicated its Article 1 duties, and people with disabilities are at the bottom of the totem pole. And until we start organizing as a group and saying, even though I don't really think you're blind because you going blind slowly, we still need visual support, right? Like if you deaf late or you acquire a disability, we need the call for unity has been for 20 years, but it is profitable to be in your own lane.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
what?
yeah.
Go ahead, Tamika.
Yeah, and I would add to that even when you think about, what to the point where Keith is saying, like how intersectional this issue is and the unity of it. So DEIA stems from affirmative action. And so affirmative action was created after, the civil rights movement. It's like, okay, how can we now, repair the things of the past? So what are things that the federal government has done, which Trump is doing without? It's like creating programs, federal programs for disabled people. So making sure a certain amount of, disabled people work at the federal government or, those type of things, or, making sure there's, Black people can get into the federal government and can go into, universities and stuff like that, So those are things, but within Trump's administration, within the bigger white nationalist movement, they want to end affirmative action. So actually, there was in the books, I put a comment and I shared it on my Facebook, but they want to end, the affirmative action program for disabled people, and the amount of disabled, people to work in the federal government, and they want to take everything away. So yeah, it's definitely not in a vacuum. This is a conservative effort from a white nationalist movement to dismantle everything, and all of us get hurt in the process.
I do want to, as a conservative, I do want to point out there is nothing conservative about this current administration. There nothing. They are there are a whole lot of isms at play in this current administration, and conservatism is not one of them. Limited government is and empowerment are some of the conservative ideas that were behind the ADA originally. Empowering people like those of us with disabilities so that we can work instead of being reliant on disability. But in order to do that, we need the accommodations, to be able to even get into buildings sometimes. And so I think that I refuse to let the current MAGA GOP claim the term of conservative, because they are not. I think that, the whole idea behind disability rights is that we have the ability and the right to be, to live, to be out in the community. One of the things that has made me angriest was when Trump issued his executive order calling for institutionalization. And so many people don't understand the history of that, and that you're basically talking imprisonment and torture.
Yes.
And I see people just on social media taking up that rallying cry to institutionalize people.
Yes. This one of the things that as an activist advocate or whatever I'm supposed to be called when we out there, like, stop trying to kill us, right? There is a distinction between saying I have a view on how a government should run versus I have a view on the level of humanity I'm going to afford. Those are two completely and separate discussions. America, at this moment, for people with disabilities, ironically, for the disability movement community itself to be as silent on racism as it is the core of the eugenics, which is the core of their ideology, which is being hurled upon us. Like, if you can't identify the problem, if you can't acknowledge the problem, people want to call it everything but what it is. People want to give solutions for everything but what needs to be solved. What is at the core of misogyny? What is at the core of sexism? What is at the core of the social framework that allows for people to say, I'm okay with the gutting of the Voting Rights Act because I'm okay with the fact that the ballots are not accessible, because I'm okay with states' rights, because I'm okay with that, because I believe in all of those things. Circle back to, why do you want to institutionalize people? There is a philosophy and a belief system that underpins the policies in which we are dealing with. People want to go. There's a reason Black women with disabilities suffer bad health care. There's a reason people with mental health don't want to call 911. There are reasons for this. This is not a political ideology. This is a humanity belief structure that they codified 249 years ago. This is not complicated. And when you talk about disability within our movement, what is frustrating is that people understand this, but they are making a cost-benefit analysis as to, how do I keep my organization going? Versus, we are at war. Okay, though this is no longer, let's march in the street. They don't care. Let's call our senators. They do not care. We need a hard reset of the House, a hard reset of the Senate, and get it on and popping. We know what to do. You have too much talent within the organizations you represent for us to be having this discussion in the next 10 years. If we are, we suck at what we do.
Well, there's a lot of reality at play, and the reality is that we are not in power. The reality is that MAGA has a trifecta in the federal government. The reality is that they do see us as less than. Yeah. And that includes people on both sides of the aisle who do not have disabilities or who are not like us. And so, given those realities, given that we are not in power, given that we are seen as lesser than, given that right now the system is being, that every kind of advantage we've had, not advantage, that the rights are being taken away, like the right to equal employment and the right to housing. Given that these are being taken away, what do we do as people with disabilities? What do we do?
So I think it's a two-pronged way of what we do. I do come from the belief and understanding of, like creating institutions also that's gonna care for our community and, do it for self, like Marcus Garvey, like, so, I think that's important too. So, that's what I'm thinking about as a filmmaker, and with my company, is thinking like, how can I tell these stories? And also, how can I employ my people? So, right. So I get paid, we all, pay, and, we can create an infrastructure right. within ourselves, within our community, so that, we will be to a degree okay, that we won't be so dependent on, the federal government. So that's one thing. Another thing is, what we could do is continue, to come together as a community and unify, as, keep talking about, and be putting people in position, running for government, positions ourselves, to create that turn, because the movement that we're seeing has been developed, been worked on, like he said, for decades, so, and now they have been positioned of power. They like, we're not gonna let it go.
Right, right.
So we're gonna destroy as much as we can, what I'm saying? So, we gotta have that same tenacity and fight, to come together to put ourselves in that position.
And I 100. See, this is why Talika is there. I told you, like again, so we have, in order to deal with the reality, you have to acknowledge the reality. A lot of people are picking a reality versus accepting the one that dead center in their face, right? So what can we do? So I guess you would have to, one, agree on what power is, right? You have to agree on who, because yes, there is about being in positions of power where you can put sycophants in place to abuse the authority that is derived from the Constitution, which is derived from the power of the people, right? So you can only be as successful as people are compliant, right? We have too many brilliant minds within our community that can literally write the boilerplate legislation. Here is our House candidate. Walk your behind down to the well. Here's the discharge petition to restore the federal government back to functionality pre-Doge. Here's what you're going to do in terms of instituting limits for Congress and things like that. Here's what you're going to do is say any president that comes along and tries to reappropriate congressional funds will then be subject to instant impeachment. Like, there are things you can write and walk that down and vote. And we need here, and if your candidates don't listen, no more signing pledges, because we know what promises are. They are meant to be broken. So we'll put you there, but we're gonna hand you the legislation. And we'll know you did it because we know what to look for. And if you pretend, oh, it's so hard to write law. No, it isn't. So, like, again, we have legal minds within our community that literally can write the gap. Like, as a person who worked on Medicare for All, who became Romney Care, which is now the Affordable Care Act, to watch everything go up in smoke, it's personal, right? But what's even more personal is that there are people who will rationalize the reason for private insurance versus public insurance is but not understand that insurance is basically a Ponzi scheme. It's pooled risk, right? Like, so what better way to serve your community than do what the government says, look out for the common good and the common wellness of its people. So our community, we have doctors, we have technicians, we have design, like we have everything we need. So as Tamika said, build that infrastructure for do us for us. So like, we good, people just gotta stop being so damn scary.
Well, and I guess that's too what Representative Shurik was talking about, with more of us have to run for office and get involved at every single level.
I tried, but I also got beat up by the Democratic Party in 2004 and 2008. I still got a position. So this is where this is where the reality of being in public office and people saying about democracy. Because when you talk about democracy, particularly if you're a Black person, particularly if you're disabled, people get offended if you vote the way you want to vote, right? So if you vote, let's say, third party, or you're whoever, and vote counterintuitive to who you are, somebody will say, oh, you wasted your vote. Well, that's an arrogant stance. Particularly if you're talking to a person who's descended of chattel slavery. Like, there are trees with nooses for me to be able to make a decision on the process to cast a vote. So when you're talking about people with disabilities, this is why I think the intersectionality of class and race and disability needs to take place internally. You can't model yourself on the civil rights struggle where we were talking about humanity. We are in Article 1, Section 2 of the Constitution as 3/5 of the human, which means that if you are eugenic, you don't get that stuff. That led to the institutions. That led to the saltpeter in special education. That led to Brown versus Board of Education. If you let the Negroes in, you're going to want to let the crippled kids in. Like, people, if you can't acknowledge the link to that and still want to practice racism, sexism, or any other ism while you want a breathing tube, like, my God, like, how can I take this seriously? But we have the brilliant minds within our community to take care of us. And we have the candidates, and we have the power. So we good. We just literally have to decide, am I more interested in standing on division, or can I really acknowledge everybody's humanity and know that my liberation is intertwined with theirs?
Exactly.
So, 2 more questions. First, and we'll start with Tamika and then go to Keith. What 2 things do you see that every single one of us on this call can do going forward to stand up for disability rights?
So I think what you can, 2 things that you can do is, using your voice, learning through the skills that how to, advocate for your needs, advocate for your community. So that's by, writing your legislator. We got, local, and then you got state, and you got the federal. So a lot of politics is also local. So, being active in your city, being active, in your county. That's the, branch too. Also being vocal in your state. So that's one of the things that I'm doing is paying attention to what is happening in the state of Michigan, because the same playbook that's been done federally is happening in Michigan. And so where they're having cuts to personal care assistance, there's also been cuts to special education. There's also been cuts to numerous things, that's affecting disabled people. CILs is being cut in Michigan. And so, keeping abreast to what's happening in your state, in your city, and those type of things is important. And also, joining your, local disability or racial justice, your local organization, I think is, important too. So there are Centers for Independent Living. I know all, skills are not always created equal. They don't always do the same thing, but, but that's a good start. I know here in Michigan, we have 3 organizations that are good. There's Detroit Disability Power that I highly recommend to check out. There's also Warriors on Wheels that I've, been part of. There is Black Deaf Advocates. I'm organizing with the president of that chapter, Teddy Dorsett. So, just learning what type of disability justice organizations locally, and there's National New Disabled South, this organization, the Disability for Democracy. So there's other national organizations that you can also be part of.
And to that point, most states have a Center for Disability Rights.
Yes, that's it. Yeah.
So Keith, what are your 2?
The first one is actively choose joy. I'm gonna say it again. You have to actively choose joy, because in this moment of crisis, it is way too easy to get sucked up in the rabbit hole. So as serious as things are, I would say, I'm gonna tell you, the reason we are doing this is not so we can keep doing this. It's so that we can actively just be enjoy and doing like the most incoherent stuff that people don't really like. What are you doing? I'm enjoying my life. That's what I'm doing. What are you doing? Me too. Okay. Like that is why you are in a movement. That is why you are getting services. This is why. So one, actively choose joy. But two, one again is really, if you don't understand America, or you have a perspective on the history of America, or you have a perspective on policy, please, before you say anything, there are a couple of documents that you need to read, but you need to read the Constitution, like the real Constitution, not the edited version on the Confederate White House website, like the real Constitution. You also need to understand why the founding of the Heritage Foundation. What is contextualism? What is originalism? What is, we are originalists. The reason you need to understand this, these things define how they define policy when they talk about us. When this is on a local level, this is as simple as your child's IEP. Like Tamika said, there's what's the old saying? All politics are local, right? There's a reason you had people talking about critical race theory. It wasn't that people, all of a sudden, it's because it became an issue that they took locally that was in a national framework. We as the disability community, and I will share a story real quick. 2008, they called me to the Young Democrats thing over here in Boston, Young Leaders of Color. And I was at home playing PlayStation, so I was minding my own business. But the call you have to say, Keith, we need to come on down because the black folks and the brown folks is trying to do the DNC. We get down. This is when Howard Dean is their chair. And at the time, the statement was to then and even now, and you heard it in the previous panel. If you engage the disability community, you can swing any election by 5 to 10 points. This is not hyperbole. This is 60 million strong. If you have 48 million of voting age, then you are literally the second most powerful voting bloc. Now, for those of us who do this, we also understand that just because you're a person with a disability don't mean you see yourself as a person with a disability. So what are those, like you said, Tamika, what are those intersecting issues, right? Because I talk about it like everybody likes a house, everybody likes food, people like clean air, people should want clean water, and everybody like to be safe. It's real basic stuff, right? And everybody wants to be able to wake up and want to go, you know what? I just want to do nothing and go about my black ass business. So actively choose joy, but really in your capacity as a leader, as a person who you can have a focus. Like there's no problem to having a focus. All of our issues are labeled, but at the core of it is a human. If there's no human at the core of it, there's no issue. So actively choose joy, focus on the humanity of our community, and then, let's have at it.
Well, on that note, I don't know that we could end on a better note than that. Just actively choose joy, recognize humanity, and take action. So on that note, we will turn it back over to Bob and Naida. Thank you very much, Tamika and Keith. This has been a wonderful conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
And so hold on a second. We need to make sure that we bring up Brittany as well. And I don't know what's going on here. My hands are shaking. That's what's happening right now. And I apologize. Brittany, if you can turn on your camera and if you can do the pinning because my hands are trembling, that'd be great.
Yes, no problem. Everybody is pinned and I can share the announcements whenever we're ready to do that.
Okay, I'm just trying to see. Everyone is pinned. I'm just
of the folks speaking in this moment, but I can pin everyone who has been a participant today if that.
No, just pin those who are speaking in the moment right now. That'd be easiest. So, go ahead, Brittany. You wanted to go speak first.
Sure. No, thank you again. It's great to be here with you. I am the executive director of Principals First, so it's our first time doing an event like this and kind of going into virtual events additionally, but it was obviously a very enlightening conversation. And we, like we said, we're a pro-democracy group that cares about the Constitution and the rule of law, making sure that our elected leaders do as well. And we have events all over the country. We host dinners, community forums, town halls, and our big event that we have every year is our annual summit, and that will be next year, February 21st and 22nd, and that's going to be at the National Harbor. We haven't officially even announced it yet, so you're kind of getting a little bit of a sneak peek here, but it was great being here with you all today.
Thanks, Brittany. Bob, do you want to say something?
Just in general, or announcements, or
Oh,
okay. I really, I'm saying this from the bottom of my heart. I really enjoyed everything about today, all the speakers. It was educational for me, and it's very important. I just want to say that everyone here genuinely was speaking truth to power, which is what we need to do. Because I think people of all disabilities tend to have the habit of accepting what they get. And we need to genuinely make a new deal for our own people in America and advance our cause. It's just a shame that what we have to do right now is fight for what we already have. And so that's what I have to say about that. I also want to take a moment to make some announcements about what Disability Community for Democracy is currently organizing. Disability Community for Democracy, Inc. is hosting the Bed-In Liberation for the Disability Community virtual town hall on Saturday, October 4th from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Time. The issues that we are focusing on are RFK Jr.'s autism registry and the criminalization of the homeless. There is a link on the screen right now that you can follow. I don't know if somebody wants to put that link in the chat so that it's clickable. If you would like to get involved with our organization or learn more about Disability Community for Democracy, Inc., you can visit our Linktree link, which you'll also see displayed right now. And we have a future event that we are currently organizing that we will have more information of in the future, but it'll be during Black History Month. We are hosting a 4-part series called Being Black and Disabled is My Superpower. And it'll be on February 7th, 14th, 21st, and 28th. More information to follow. And Aida, I think you wanted to say some things to wrap up.
yeah, I do. The one thing I do want to say is something Keith mentioned is the question about unity. And I asked that question because I think it's important. As the CEO and founder of Disability Community for Democracy, I come from the mental health space initially first. That's where I did a lot of my advocacy. And I think unfortunately in our country, there was the general disability movement, and then there was the mental health movement. And so the movements were separated, right? And then within the general disability movement, there were people advocating for different things. And now we need to become unified, right? We need to have these discussions, but we need to have them in an intersectional way. And that's why Disability Community for Democracy is here. And And we can't have a democracy if we don't talk about the things that Keith mentioned, like the intersectionality of disability and race, the intersectionality between the disability and class, intersectionality between disability and gender identity and sexual orientation. I am also a moderate conservative, and MAGA isn't conservative. I believe in limited government in a lot of different ways, but healthcare is a human right. There's certain things, civil rights is not pie, and you can be conservative and be a white nationalist, and you can also be a progressive, because I've been in progressive spaces that are just as racist as the MAGA movement, but they're on the left. So I just want the level set that we need to come together as a pro-democracy movement for everybody, because collective liberation, regardless of where you are on the political spectrum, is not going to matter if we can't eat, we can't get health care, and we are not safe. Full stop. And that's why Disability Community for Democracy will always work with people who respect our humanity, regardless if it's on the left or the right, and regardless if it's led by people with disability or not, because I will say this, I went to Principles First event, and I'm going to close with this, last year. And I mentioned, hey, where are captions? I have processing disorder. And even though the captions weren't working, they made an effort to make sure that I had access, that I was able to sit where I needed to sit so I can easily get my walker, put my feet up, because it's a long day of sitting. And in a lot of progressive spaces, that doesn't happen. So we need to remember our history and how we got here in terms of the disability rights and justice movement in the first place. And we also need to do better as just human beings, and call a thing regardless of where you are politically. White nationalism is wrong, and I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. And the fact that, I said this earlier, the fact that we are at a point in this country where we're honoring a human being who in October, who hated everyone in this room for different reasons, is horrible. And every person pretty much who voted for that was white, right? So was white, and it was not a political party. So we just need to remember that white nationalism is not tied to just one political party. And I just wanted to be very, very clear on that. So with that, I'm really grateful to be here. And thank you so much. Brittany, I cannot wait to see you in real life in February. And thank you so much for partnering with Disability Community for Democracy. And I can't wait for us to do something again. Thank you, and everybody have a great rest of your weekend. I'm going to end the recording, and peace out, everyone.
Take care.
Bye.
Ciao.